Good afternoon, viewers, and welcome back. Those of you who are joining us on Channel 6 and those of you who have been joining us, the live feed across social media on the various platforms. We have been with you since yesterday, keeping you up to date with what's happening at GCOM, what's happening across the country as the conduct of the 2025 elections unfolded. We brought you reports from the fields. We brought you analysis and insights from expert contributors, panelists who were able to share perspectives on what's happening with regards to shifting politics in Guyana, what's happening with our demographics who make up the electorate for 2025. And we want to continue those discussions this afternoon, but let me just give you a quick update in terms of what has come into GCOM. You know, you have a new feature that has been a game changer so far with regards to the speed at which we're able to see the results of the elections. GCOM introduced, as part of the reforms following what transpired in 2020, to speed up the process, they have introduced a new feature to allow for returning officers to upload digital copies of the statements of polls once they have been signed off at the place of poll, to be uploaded directly onto a platform, a portal that was created by GCOM, so that you can see, you the electorate can see in real time what GCOM is seeing. As they receive it, you can see it, and you can start your tabulation for yourself. The results that have been, the statements of polls that have been uploaded so far reflect 100% upload of statements of polls for all regions except region 1, region 6, and region 7. Region 1 is at 92% of upload at the moment. Region 6 is at 96%, and region 7 is still lagging behind at 57%. But all the other regions have uploaded 100% of their SOPs, and I'm pretty sure that you have been calculating and doing your own tabulations, looking at those SOPs online, because you can see them as GCOM can see them. Nevertheless, as customary, we all have to wait for the official process to take its course in GCOM, the tabulation process that has to be done in full view of all of the party agents, the commission itself, all of the various stakeholders who and international and local observer missions who would normally oversee the tabulation process in central GCOM, when all of those statements of polls would have been brought into a central command center. And so we have to wait for official pronouncement from GCOM. The electorate this year was in excess of 757,000 people. 27,879 of them were first-time voters. We heard from the CARICOM observer mission so far. They just concluded their press conference, and they made some observations, which we will get into as we open up the discussion. They made some recommendations. We have also had the pleasure of inviting and benefiting from the insights of the Commonwealth Observer Mission. They appeared on this show earlier today, and they will have their press conference to provide their preliminary findings tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, and we encourage you to tune in. The others, the Carter Center and the others, will indicate when they're ready to give their preliminary findings, and we will encourage you to tune in and hear for yourself what the observer missions have to say about the conduct of the 2025 elections. I'm joined now by an esteemed panel. Suelle Findlay, who is a communication practitioner, specialist here in Guyana, has been in the media and in the communication landscape for a while. I think she's currently on a path to being called Dr. Suelle Findlay, and I can't wait to congratulate her when that process is complete. We also have Jerry Gouveia Sr. We benefited from the insights of Jerry Gouveia Jr. yesterday, and so Sr. got jealous, and he is here to share his own perspectives. You know that Jerry Gouveia Sr. has been a long-standing leader of the private sector here in Guyana. He's the chairman of the Roraima Group of Companies, currently serving as National Security Advisor to the incumbent President Ali. And so we want to hear from them their own observations of the conduct of the polls of 2025. But even before we talk about what transpired yesterday, let's just wind it back a bit to the campaign, ladies and gentlemen. The campaign, as we've heard from many of the panelists who have joined us in 2025, appeared to have shown some growth, some maturing of parties as well as electorate. By and large, we are told by most observers that the campaigns were above board. We had some skirmishes here and there, but by and large above board. Have you made your own observations and can say the same?
I think the youth turnout has been phenomenal for this year's campaign. A lot of crossovers, people who have traditionally shunned the People's Progressive Party or, might have their own feelings over time, they really came out this year during the campaign and have joined in endorsing President Ali, and really weren't shy about voicing their commitment and their belief in the party. So from my perspective, a lot of young people have come out. As well, the numbers have increased as well, not just young people, they're important, or they're one sect, but other, people middle-aged, I don't want to say old, but more mature population as well. And we know that group would have been rooted in culture, and this is the group that would say, I born this and I born that, and I gone dead like this and whatever. And so we witnessed that those persons as well have come out and weren't shy about their belief and in their support of the party. And I really thought that was phenomenal.
Jerry, the trends are pretty clear that the demographics and the pattern of voting and perhaps the factors that influence the voter are shifting.
Well, you spoke about the campaign methodology, and I have actually been observing elections for a long, long time. And you're right, I believe that this 2025 election campaign is probably one of the most sophisticated ones I've seen, especially the level of the PPP. And I would even venture to say, I think the Win Party, they took it to another level. And then what was more important, I believe, is that a lot of it was substance. So you heard a lot about what they will do better and how they will make the country better. So traditionally, we've always had a campaign that was based on race. We still had some of it, unfortunately, smear campaign, talking about corruption whole day and whole night, rather than saying how are we going to do education better, how are we going to do manufacturing better, how would we spend our money better. But I think those of us and people who listened to the campaign would have seen this was a campaign that was preparing the nation for the future. And from that perspective, I thought it was different. And I think more particularly, even with the emergence of the Win Party, I think it also wake up the ideas of political operatives that this is not old school anymore. This is about really winning hearts and minds, which I will tell you, and I've been working with President Ali for 5 years, and if I've ever seen a man who worked tirelessly day and night to win hearts and minds, it was him. I remember the first, he got into office, and the very next day, we were walking through Tiger Bay, meeting people, and we were all over the country. We were in And so I think this new dispensation, you can't take the people for granted. And this campaign prepared, I think it prepared the politicians to understand that they really have to work for the vote of the people.
There were two key elements at play, and I want to get your thoughts on whether you thought they had an impact on both the campaign and the crafting of the manifestos. We had the opportunity for the first time perhaps in a very long time since independence to juxtapose one political party's tenure in office for one term versus tenure for one term. 5 versus 5, side by side, one flowing into the other. Many argue that it wasn't a fair comparison to make because one had oil resources to leverage and the other didn't. But then I've heard other pundits argue that the correlation in its tenure between 2015 and 2020, while the oil resources had not begun flowing in earnest in terms of real cash going into the coffers, we knew by 2015 that oil was available in recoverable quantities, and therefore we had already become an oil nation, and therefore monies and resources could have been accessed from anywhere. Once the willpower was there to get into a transformational development pathway. The PPP was able to do that very effectively because you see that up to 2025, just about 35% thereabout of the national budget was from oil resources. It therefore means that the PPP administration was finding resources from other sources, other means, to be able to fund its transformational agenda. And so the comparative of 5 years versus 5 years was one thing that the voters had the opportunity to do. And the other thing that I want to bring in is the crafting of the manifestos. The advent of oil resources, it seems, allowed the opportunity for political parties to think big, to go deep, to go wide, because they know were they to enter office, they will have access to vast resources to make those dreams and plans a reality. To what extent do you believe that impacted voters' decision?
This is not about money.
In choosing?
This was not about money. This was about creating the enabling environment for private sector development, for creation of jobs.
Vision.
And what I will tell you is, people may not like to hear this, but when the AP and when the coalition went into power in 2015, they went with a lot of goodwill. There was a lot of people, and very quickly, because of their attitude and their behavior, and then of course their policies. So it wasn't about money; it's about how they made people feel, how they made the ordinary citizens feel. They reduced VAT to 14% and then put it on everything else. The first dinner we had, the private sector had with President Granger at the time, Eddie Boyer asked him, what is his economic policy? And he looked at us and said, the redistribution of wealth. And the private sector is like, could you explain that? He said, you'll find out. And so very quickly they lost the private sector. And when you lose the private sector is one of the biggest employees of Guyanese. And when you lose that, and you lose creating that enabling environment, you lose the steam. People talk to their staff and so on. And so you take that into President Ali. From the day President Ali he got into office, this is the most private sector centric government. Every day he thinks about how do we create jobs for our young people? How do we encourage investors? What do we have to do? You know, how do you measure this, and how we work with foreign investors and Guyanese? But I'll go back and tell you why this wasn't about money, because I remember when President Jagdeo got into office, he didn't have money either. When he got into office, our economy in 1992 was a $300 million economy. By the time he got into office, it was probably maybe a $2 billion economy, and he moved that economy to a $4 billion economy with his ability to think, his ability to motivate and inspire the private sector to create more jobs, to invest. And I was a young businessman when he started, and I was very involved in it. So it wasn't about money, it's about how the government make the private sector feel. And I think that is what they feel at. And President Ali understood that to create the jobs that we need, you needed to create the enabling environment and inspire and motivate the private sector. And that is the difference. It's not about money, it's about the leadership and the ability to inspire and motivate the private sector.
And, you know, I like to endorse that as well. He came in with a plan. He had a vision. This is where I want to see Guyana, at least by 5 years. And I don't even think he looked past 5 years. He had a plan for this first 5 years. This is where we're starting. This is where we want to be. And in a sense, I often look back and I'm thinking he made it look so easy, so effortless, because he lives and breathes the Guyanese people and developing this country. I have traveled with him a few times, and you know, he's just sitting there. From the time he sits down on a bilateral, it's about Guyana. This is not, Gav, how you doing? And I mean that there's time for that. But when he sits there, it's about the agenda of Guyana. How can we make Guyana better? Advancing the various sectors, food security, and all of that. And that is what was missing from the 2015-2020 administration.
And that is not about money. This is about
It's not about money.
philosophy,
It's about will. It's about love.
Correct.
And you know, this is not, and he had, of course, he focused on the private sector and bringing everybody together. We've heard him talk about consortiums, we've talked about expanding business. He's also spent a lot of time encouraging young people to come together. One example I can remember right now is a catering consortium that, you know, bringing people together so that together he believes in the strength in numbers, and that you don't have to do this alone. I believe, you know, he believes that if we get a couple of people together, then if all we can get rich together, all we can do it together, all of us can make money. So again, it's about vision and will, and that is what President Ali has. And I expect going forward that it will not change, it will just intensify. And more young people will get an opportunity to throw their hands in and exercise their will as well.
Jerry, you mentioned the word philosophy a moment ago. We're seeing, based on the trends we started seeing from this morning, since last night, there appears to be some serious erosion, devastating erosion in some of the PNC traditional stronghold support base. Linden, Region 4. Linden, from all indications, will fall to another party for the first time in the history of that town. Region 4 apparently will go as well. With all of the mismanagement and missteps from President Granger between 2015 and 2020, the more than 200 taxes and fees placed as a burden on people's backs, the devastation of the productive sector, mining, loggers, everybody, all of those sectors were wiped out. The refusal to come up with policies that can stimulate job creation, and saying publicly to the Guyanese people that the government bears no responsibility for job creation. Aubrey Norton in these campaigns declared publicly that, I don't know what was going through his head, perhaps he was pandering to get an endorsement from former President Granger, but he declared publicly for some reason that President Granger managed the economy properly, and he, Aubrey Norton, subscribes to Granger's philosophy. How much do you think that may have played a part in the PNC crumbling in places like Linden and Region 4?
Well, I think those words could have probably resulted in what is happening there now, because unfortunately, that period saw a private sector and of job creation under siege. But what I will say to you, even with Linden, I am, I have seen enormous work being done in Linden in the last 5 years by this government. I'm seeing the bridge, I'm seeing roads, I'm seeing job creation, I'm seeing contracts. And so the people of Linden really got a mind of their own. Regardless of whatever the leader of the PNC did or the government today and the work they did and the creation of jobs in getting both sides there and creating the jobs and still, so the people at Linden, they're a different breed of people.
Republic of Region 10.
They're different people. And for the work that this government have done in the millions and millions and probably billions of dollars, and that they were genuinely making, I believe, life better at Linden. And the fact that it is the results is what it is, it tells you that maybe there's something else need to be done. And if Norton failed in doing it, Mohammed probably got a trick that he did, whatever that trick is. But
you have any idea?
I have no idea, but I'm going to find out. I mean, there's all kinds of. The truth of the matter is,
Kit Nascimento says it was the sharing out of money.
Kit Nascimento is entitled to his own opinion. He's not entitled to his own facts, and we don't know this for a fact. I mean, there are all kinds of speculation. What I will say to you is that people who could turn away so quickly from people who were generous to them, and I mean, it tells you. So I think that a lot of work needs to be done, and at Linden, and but it's what it is. And I know President Ali. It will not affect his commitment to the continued development of Linden and the surrounding areas in Region 10. He is going to treat all Guyanese, whether regardless of your gender, regardless of your race, regardless of your profession or geographically where you come from. President Ali, when he talks about a one Guyana, I think people think it's a political slogan. For him, it's a way of life. Yeah. It's a personal philosophy. And the thing with President Ali, which when you made the point about how different he is different because he's a man of God. I mean, and it's not a joke. You know, he lived this as a mantra in his life. He also went to the National Defense University in Washington. People don't know this. President Ali is just like I am. He's a graduate from that university. And President Ali, when the time comes, and I remember in 2023 when Venezuela was starting to become very aggressive, and our citizens were getting apprehensive, President Ali mounted an expedition of his officers, senior people, and dragged us into the border. And we actually went there, walked the ground, and slept with our soldiers. And President Ali was right there with us. And so he's a leader with a serious difference. I sometimes say to him, he's a retail politician. He touches every single person when he could, and he's not playing games. He really genuinely means it when he does it.
And he's not somebody, just to interject, he's not somebody to tell you to do something that he himself is not willing to do. You know, so I think that's a really, really.
He dragged us up a mountain to go put a flag. Now I went to Mount Raymond to put a guy in his flag, and then he took me up to this other, and he's leading the way, and there's all these soldiers following him, and he's just a different personality. Yeah. So I think Guyana is very fortunate at this junction time. Now we are at a place where we don't know really what these results will be, but I'll tell you, he served Guyana well, and he will respect the democracy. Whatever the results are with these elections, we all are committed to the rule of law, committed to democracy, and for me, I just hope the electorate did the right thing. But one way or the other way, President Ali will respect the rule of law, will respect democracy, and I hope everybody else does too.
On the question of Venezuela, Jerry, in these elections, Venezuela. The question of Venezuela raised its ugly head. There was an apparent link being made between Mohammed and the Maduro regime, and then we saw a very unfortunate skirmish on the border as GCOM officials were taking out their resources to get to their polling places and so on to set up. What do you make of this phenomena of our elections now being targeted? Is that the case?
Again, you know, in the process of these things, you have assumptions, you have presumptions, then you have information and changes to intelligence. And nobody really have, not even good information. What you have is a lot of assumptions. And I don't like to deal in that area. But what I would say to you, you need to ask yourself, is it coincidental that the U.S. battle group is in our waters a day after our elections? And why are they there? And it needs to be, we all need to think about it. In that Guyana's geopolitical importance to the world and the interference that we were getting from Venezuela and the intentions of Venezuela, not something that is taken lightly at a geopolitical level. And also our own internal politics have attracted very serious attention. So nobody's going to tolerate Venezuela interfering in Guyana, whether at an internal level or an external level. But there are serious concerns about Venezuela and their posturing and the fact that they have players in Venezuela that is of concern to our Western democracies and our Western allies, you know, Iran and that is they're building drones and so on. So they are on almost like a trajectory to try to destabilize the Caribbean and destabilize this region, and we have to be very careful.
Thank you for those insights. Let's now go back to the observations made by the CARICOM Observer Mission, a press conference held about an hour or two ago. Very, very minor observations made with regards to irregularities, and irregularities were particularly pointed out to be more administrative in nature. Nothing that affected the observer mission said nothing that amounted to an interference in the process, something that would negatively impact the process or impede the electorate from being able to exercise their democratic right. They talked about the fact that in some polling stations, the OLE was posted on the outside of the polling place so that when the voters come, they can quickly peruse just to double check and verify that their name is on the list and that they're in fact at the right polling stations, while some polling stations didn't have it up. But they also were able to indicate that in some areas where the OLE was not posted physically, there were GCOM staff with tablets with a digital copy of the OLE quickly coming to assist voters to verify that they are the right place and that their name is on that list. They highlighted the fact that when voting closed at 6 o'clock, in most of the areas where they monitored, voters that were in the line at the time of the close of poll were all allowed to exercise their democratic right. They were not disenfranchised. They talked about the legal amendments that were made to the Representation of the People Act and the legal framework within which GCOM operates, that from their perspective have redounded to vast improvements in efficiency of the electoral system as managed by GCOM, and it was demonstrated so yesterday throughout the country in terms of efficiency improvements. They talked about that there was a particular concern about the use of state resources. And in that regard, they had some recommendations. They would like to see legislation that deals with both the use of state resources, legislation that deal with campaign financing, creating a framework for campaign financing. They would like to see a framework where we shift away from the appointment of commissioners from the two main political parties only, and that perhaps even if that was retained, that it would be broadened to allow for independent stakeholders to be part of the process, and perhaps that you should institute term limits for the commissioners. They recommended that biometrics need to be seriously considered as we go forward. They also expressed some concern about the bloated state of the list. Nevertheless, they qualified that concern.
Said so?
Pardon?
The international observer said so?
Yes, the CARICOM team. But in indicating some concerns about the bloated state of the list, they qualify that by indicating that it is recognized that there are several state agencies that have the responsibility to provide the requisite information to GCOM to allow it.
I wonder if I could go over this, because this is, you see, again, people are making comments. First of all, do they expect the president of this republic to fly without his security team? I mean, and people need to understand that this is a big country. The president moves around with his security team, and he's the president. Until such time, he's no longer the president, he's the president. And there's a particular protocol that surrounds the president and his travel. If you call that state resources, then you're being malicious. I don't like that, because the well-being of our president is dear to all of us. That's the first thing. This thing about so state resources, particularly people are looking at the president and the fact that he moves around the way he does. And that the president of the United States fly with Air Force One, wherever he goes.
During the campaign.
Yes.
It doesn't change.
Because your security detail need to be with you. The issue with a bloated list, you know, when people say that, it is because people do not understand what happened here. In 2008, when we scrapped the entire manual list. And in 2008, for the first time, we went back and did a completely new list using biometrics. So people who talk about biometrics need to understand there are already biometrics in the system. And in 2008, we went back and we did a complete national registration system. And we did two things that was different. One is that we added the biometrics, where we then scanned it and converted it into an electronic biometric database with every single person in that system. And then we started to do the continuous cycles of registration. As a pilot, for example, if they came to my house and I wasn't there and they did their house to house, then I will not be on the list. We, for the first time, opened continuous cycles of registration. So pilots, loggers, miners, Americans who move around the place, your family, would be able to register. Guyanese who live overseas, who come back home, Guyanese are very patriotic and they want the ID card. And so